Sectionalism. Long, long ago, America's forefathers believed slavery would slowly die out as the nation aged. However, as a result of sectional developments, the country entered an era of bad feelings. Sectionalism can be defined as loyalty or support for a particular region or section of the nation, rather than the nation as a whole. It all started when Jefferson passed the Embargo Act of 1807, an act that prohibited trade with foreign nations. An embargo on foreign trade had an unintended consequence. It sparked the first American Industrial Revolution. Due to a lack of foreign goods, Americans, mostly in the North, were forced to produce their own goods. As a result, the North developed a distinct economy dependent on industry, while the South stagnated and continued to depend on slave labor for their plantation economy. Tensions rose when in 1820 Missouri wanted to enter the Union as a slave state, which would upset representation in Congress as there were already 11 slave states and 11 free states. It seemed like the end for the nation, but there was hope. A man named Henry Clay was here to save the day. The result? Missouri was admitted as a slave state, Maine was admitted as a free state, and slavery was prohibited above the 3630 latitude line.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Sectional tensions seemed to ease, until there was beef with Mexico. Issues with Texas resulted in an all-out war between Mexico and the United States. The war ended in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, granting the United States almost one-third of its current land. This acquisition, along with the Wilmot Proviso, which stated that slavery would be banned in territories acquired from Mexico, sparked the Free Soiler movement. Free Soilers such as Abraham Lincoln advocated to stop the expansion of slavery, unlike radical Republicans who advocated for the abolition of it. Sectional tensions begin to rise again as the South becomes unhappy with the fact that slavery will not be able to expand. Once again, in an effort to ease tensions, the man, the myth, the legend, Henry Clay saves the day with the Compromise of 1850, otherwise known as the Great Compromise. This compromise had four main components. In favor of the North, California would be admitted as a free state, and the slave trade would be banned in D.C. In favor of the South, a stronger fugitive slave law would be implemented, in which Southerners could retrieve their escaped slaves from the North, in addition to popular sovereignty in Utah and New Mexico. Balance had once again been restored. However, it did not last. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed popular sovereignty in Kansas and Nebraska, repealing the 3630 line of the Missouri Compromise, angered Northerners. This act led to the formation of the Republican Party, while also leading to the events of Bleeding Kansas, a series of violent confrontations in Kansas between Free Soilers and pro-slavery forces that signified the start of a conflict. During this time, an important precedent was also set. In the Dred Scott v. Stanford case, it was ruled that slaves were property, and the Missouri Compromise was deemed unconstitutional. The final straw for the South was the election of 1860, in which Democrats were split, allowing Lincoln to obtain the bread and become president. In response to the election, South Carolina seceded in December of 1860. It would soon establish the Confederacy, marking the end of an era, the beginning of a new one.
Part 2. Civil War. In April of 1861, the Confederacy attacked Fort Sumter, officially starting the Civil War. Initially, Lincoln claimed the goal of the war would be to preserve the Union. However, after issuing the Emancipation Proclamation, the focus of the war shifted to a war on slavery, as he verbally issued the abolition of slavery in all Confederate states. The war ended in 1865 with the surrender of Robert E. Lee, the leader of the Confederacy. Part 3. Reconstruction. The goal of Reconstruction was to bring seceded states back to the Union while also to redress the inequalities of slavery. During wartime, Lincoln made an attempt at Reconstruction through the 10% Plan, which required only 10% of the Southern states' voters to pledge loyalty to the Union in order to rejoin. In opposition, radical Republicans proposed the Wade-Davis Plan, which required 50%. However, this plan was pocket vetoed by Lincoln. After Lincoln is assassinated, the new president, Andrew Johnson, recognizes Lincoln's 10% Plan. Shortly after, the 13th Amendment is ratified, officially abolishing slavery. Since most emancipated slaves were unskilled and illiterate, the Freedmen's Bureau was established. Although mostly useless, the Bureau's greatest success was in education. Slavery was abolished, but the concept still existed. Black codes were a way to exploit African Americans for labor. They were forced to become sharecroppers, working on the land in exchange for giving up a percent of the crop yield to the owner.
This one's to end racism.
In 1866, radical Republicans called for a stricter version of Reconstruction, shifting control from the executive branch to the legislative branch. The Republican-controlled Congress subsequently passed the Civil Rights Bill of 1866, giving citizenship to African Americans while attempting to get rid of the black codes. To enforce the bill on the South, Congress also passed the 14th Amendment, declaring that all persons born in the U.S. are citizens. In 1867, Congress passed the Tenure of Office Act in order to reduce presidential power and protect Republican Reconstruction cabinet members. This act stated that the Senate must approve any presidential dismissal of a cabinet official or general. However, Johnson removed Secretary of War Edwin Stanton in 1868, ignoring the rule. The House immediately voted to impeach President Johnson, but was one vote short of the two-thirds required to remove him from office. The end of Reconstruction comes with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist group that resisted Reconstruction's efforts. Reconstruction officially ends with the Compromise of 1877, with the removal of federal troops from the South.